It's the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it, this year? In terms of domestic rugby, the Premiership has just been ridiculous. And because we're getting towards the end of the season now, we're looking at the playoffs, and the race for the playoffs is so tight. I'd be amazed if potentially all four positions don't go down to the final weekend, and we are in for something quite special towards the end of the regular season. So welcome back to the channel. I did a very short video yesterday from the Stoop. I was at that ridiculous game between Harlequins and Bath, which was just kind of set up the camera, press record, my quick thoughts without having digested or thought about the weekend as a whole. And now I find myself on Sunday evening, this is a better opportunity to look back and go through a few different talking points. So welcome back. Comment down below anything that I don't touch upon, any teams that I don't touch upon. I will go through a few individual teams at the end of the video, but I won't go through all of them, so you can have your say. And have your say on some of the big talking points that I touch upon as well. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that sort of stuff. But let's get into it, because I want to start with the playoff race, because it is the most significant talking point in this season so far, and with currently where we are. Everyone from second, which is Bath, down to Sale in 8th, have won and lost exactly the same amount of games. It is simply bonus points that currently separate where they are in the league table, which is extraordinary. Usually, and this is something I mentioned in that video from the Stoop, we have a season where certainly first and normally the top two, by this point in the year, it's pretty clear who the top two teams are. We have a very good indication of who's going to have a home Premiership semi-final, which we know how important it is. I can't ever remember a season where it is all so up for grabs still at this stage. Look at that. Bath, Saracens, Harlequins, Bristol, Exeter, Leicester, Sale have all won 8 and they have all lost 6. And one of the most interesting things actually about this weekend, I think, was the fact that the teams who struggled last week, think about Harlequins getting absolutely hammered by Saracens, think about Northampton having 50 put on them against Bristol, think about Sale who faded away in defeat to Bath. All of them came back and had significant victories this weekend. And I just wonder why that is. Is it simply down to home form, do you think? That those teams were at home this week, so they had a better chance of winning and they ended up winning? Or is there something more in it? Can you end up looking too deeply at these things? Was it because they didn't get their preparation right following the break in the Six Nations coming into this week? Was it about international players returning and how they rotated their squad? A few different factors it could be, but that just interests me, the fact that those teams were all able to come back into it. And as I say, from what it does to the complexion of this table, I think that's a really, really exciting thing. I don't think it's purely down to home form. Personally, I can't fully put my finger on why it is, but we have seen this year the swings in results, the swings in form for all of these different sides. It's just, I don't know, something in the water this year. Maybe the level in the Premiership is relatively even, more even than it has been in previous years when Saracens or Leicester, when they won it, or even Sale last year, you had those teams that were out in front. So it's absolutely fascinating. And I suppose one of the question marks is it because the Premiership is a poorer standard? That's a really difficult question to answer, I think. At the start of this year, I thought absolutely, yes, it is. It is an entertaining division, but the standard isn't that high. But so far, what we've seen in the Champions Cup goes against that with the amount of teams that have got through. We've got loads of the English teams in the last 16 of the Champions Cup coming up next weekend. Now, many of those teams may well get knocked out. Northampton, I think, have got Munster at home. You'd say that's winnable, but Saracens are away to Bordeaux. Bath and Exeter play each other, so one of them will lose. Harlequins are at home to Glasgow. We'll see how they get on. I think Leicester play Leinster, so that's going to be really difficult. We'll see how they get on. But the whole narrative of the Premiership and the Premiership teams aren't that good doesn't necessarily stack up at the moment, even though it was definitely something that I was buying into earlier on in the season. I still think could be the case, could be why the table is so tight as well. But as I say, it means for a great playoff race. And if anyone is bold enough to stick their neck out, can you predict top 4? Most of us, I think, would probably say Northampton are going to get there because they're top of the table for large parts of the season. They've probably looked like the best team, but still even in there. All it takes is a couple of defeats, a couple of results that don't go your way. If they do get through in the Champions Cup, having to fight on 2 fronts, who knows? But predicting the other 3 spots particularly all 4 spots, but certainly the other 3 is so difficult. All right, let's get on to some of the other stuff this weekend. One of the biggest talking points was something that happened at the Stoop. The yellow card, Ernie Herbst coming back on early, and all the fallout from that. At the time, even though I was doing commentary, I saw him come back on early. But I'll be honest, I just thought, well, surely the people keeping the time have got the absolute accurate time, and I was just a little bit out when I was expecting him to come back onto the field to play, and didn't think too much else of it until after the game, and you realise that Bath had spoken to the officials about it, had raised it, and it was a much bigger talking point. And today we got a statement from the RFU essentially saying, yes, a mistake was made. Apologies to both teams, even though not sure there's too much need to apologise to Harlequins, who benefited from it. And the result stands. And on the one hand, I don't see what else they can do, in all honesty. You can't replay the game, you can't change the result, you can't do anything of that nature. But it's pretty sloppy, and it's pretty sloppy given the fact that it has come a week after we had the whole TMO in the Quins Saracens game, possibly not looking at something because of what was said. Then we got this statement about they don't listen to the commentary, but sometimes they overhear it. Just kind of muddied the waters. And again, this seems to be a process which doesn't make too much sense. I would have liked to see a bit more detail in that RFU statement for why did this happen. Okay, they've admitted a mistake was made. Fine, mistakes happen. But why? Can they give us some more details for exactly why that happened and why there was some sort of breakdown in communication, and maybe what they will put in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. Frustration for Bath, I absolutely get it. Harlequins obviously aren't to be to blamed here either. But I don't know, it's just a fairly unsatisfactory situation. It's a shame that it has become the talking point, understandably, that it currently is. Let's get on to some of the teams. As I said at the start of the video, I won't cover absolutely everyone, so have your say in the comments if I don't mention your team. But upon further reflection, there was maybe just a few things I wanted to add for some of the teams and based upon what we've seen this weekend, starting with Bath and that defeat to Harlequins. Now, on the one hand, they were absolutely awful in the first half. But I've covered a lot of Bath games over the last few years. I've done trips up to the northeast and seen them go up to Newcastle against the Falcons side that wasn't that great. Bath were expected to win and weren't able to get a victory because it was a tough place to go and win. I've seen all sorts of times where Bath have been a side, despite the players they have, the quality they have, the money put into that team, and they don't deliver. And even though they lost, I think there is a steeliness to this Bath team. It was very noticeable to me that Johan van Graan afterwards said, we don't give up, we don't fight, we fight. That's been a real mantra for him, and I think you can see there is a harder edge to this Bath team rather than possibly be when they were a bit of a soft touch in previous teams. And also Niall Annett, the replacement hooker, speaking to him after the game or interviewing him after the game, and one of the first things he said was, we're not happy. And I think there are a lot of previous Bath teams that wouldn't have been happy with the result, but they would have focused on the positives of getting 2 bonus points. And bonus points are key, we know that, given how tight a race it is to get to the top 4. But I think the fact that what they really focused on was that was not good enough, that is not the standards that we demand of ourselves, speaks volumes to how the mentality of this team has changed. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll get top 4 because it's so competitive. I think they could well do, but I just think it puts them in a good stead moving forward, and that was something that struck me. I want to mention Exeter as well. Lost today against Sale, absolutely hammered, completely blown away. And I just wonder whether today was quite a good example, I think, of the fact that this is a youthful Exeter team. They have received, deservedly, plenty of plaudits this season for the way in which the coaches have refreshed that team with a lot of long-term players having left the club, the fact that they are still competitive, Exeter 2.0, and it's up, without question, if I was an Exeter Chiefs fan, I'd feel really positive about the direction this club is heading in. But I just wonder whether today, and actually Rob Baxter, for those of you who watched it on TNT, spoke about this when they spoke to him in the middle of the game or in the second half, when the commentary team were chatting to him. And he said how frustrated he was. And I think he hinted at the fact that it is a younger team. And for me, it was maybe signs of youth and inexperience and not being able to correct the course of a game when it isn't going their way, particularly away from home. And actually, if you look at the home and away tables, it speaks to that. Exeter are one of the poorest teams in the league in terms of their results away from home. And that, I think, feeds in to this argument. They're still a really good team. Going to Sandy Park, if they were to get in the playoffs for any team, would be a huge challenge. But I just wonder whether we've seen some of the limitations because of the inexperience in that squad. Or maybe it was just an off day, who knows. As for Bristol, Bristol are a fascinating team. There were earlier points this season, I'm a Bristol fan, where I just thought they're just not it. Once again, it's going to be a middle-of-the-road season. They've dropped away from the team that finished top of the pile in the Premiership one year, that won the European Challenge Cup, that back-to-back years got themselves to Premiership semi-finals. They'd hit a roadblock and they weren't able to keep moving forward. But the signs are positive. I mean, 2 wins out of the Six Nations break. If you want to go further back than there, actually their form is looking really strong in the Premiership, stretched over quite a long period of time because of breaks for Six Nations and Champions Cup. And I just wonder whether they are back. And there's 2 reasons that maybe suggest that could be the case. Number one is set piece. When Bristol were at their best, they had a really good set piece that gave them great platform to be able to spread it wide. Their driving maul was really strong. Their maul defence was good. And the other factor was they scored points. And you look at their last few games, the victory against Northampton, the victory against Bath, the 2 home games where they put 90-odd points across the board in those 2 games. Going away to Kingsholm and once again getting themselves a 4-try bonus point. They are scoring points now. Their game seems to be far more all-round. Have they timed it perfectly to make a run for the playoffs? For me, that would be quite extraordinary if they end up getting in there. There are not many people, myself included, that would have predicted that 3 or 4 games ago. But they're going pretty well at the moment and they've put themselves right in the mix. So I've been critical of them, but credit to Pat Lam and that team because they've done a great job. Just a couple of more teams I want to touch upon. Saracens. Where are you all with Saracens? So they're right there with everyone else. 8 wins, 6 defeats. I think there's probably a lot of us that just have them ahead of a number of other people. And I think that's because of the credit in the bank for Saracens, because they have been there and done it so many times over the years. A lot of those other teams you look at and you think, are they going to be able to get there? They haven't done it for a while. They haven't won things. With Saracens, it's the opposite. I think because they've been there, and it's just a team that you absolutely believe are capable of doing it when it matters most, doing it at the business end of the season. And I think that credit in the bank probably counts for a lot amongst a number of fans at the moment. They have been up and down this year, but I just simply can't write them off. I think at their best, they are a match for anyone. The Stonex will continue. I know they've lost a couple of games at the Stonex this year, but if they were to get themselves, say, second or first, that's going to be a really tough away day for someone. You just feel like Saracens will be there or thereabouts come the end of the season. Maybe it's just history bias, the fact that they've done it before coming in there, but I struggle to look past them. The final team that I wanted to mention, and I apologise if I haven't touched upon your side, was actually Newcastle. Not because they're going to do anything this year. They're rock bottom of the table, lost all 14 games. They will finish 10th. In an ideal world, there would be some sort of promotion relegation. But we are starting to see improvements, I think, from Newcastle. And I think the biggest thing for me is Newcastle will pick up a result, at least one result or a result or 2 before the end of the season. And the potential impact of that for those heading for the top 4, I think could be huge. So they've got Sale and Bath at home, and they've got Bristol and Gloucester away from home. And in particular, those Sale and Bath home games, looking at how tight it was against Leicester on Friday night, Newcastle probably feel that they should have won that game. But I think they will have opportunities to win games. I think Steve Diamond will make them a tougher outfit, will set them up and put them in positions where they can get results. It just depends whether they're able to get over the line. And I think that's something, as I say, that will have an impact as we head into the final few weeks. I think for the first time in a long time, Newcastle fans will look at their team and see the direction they're heading, feel that there is reason to feel positive moving forwards. I saw Mark Smith, the press officer, tweet something similar to that over the weekend, and I can understand why they would feel that way. So the Premiership is brilliant. That was how I started the video. That's how I will end it. Comment down below who's going to make top 4. Mention any of your teams that I haven't touched upon. Apologies if I haven't spoken about them. And let me know. I appreciate you watching. Make sure you like the video as well. If you want to see more Premiership content, thumbs up on the video. Spread it to as many people as possible. And make sure you're subscribed. I want to get to 15,000 subs as soon as possible. I feel like I've been stuck on 4.8 for a little while now. So make sure you are subscribed if you aren't already. And I'll see you in the next one.